All right, so really, I just want to thank everybody for coming. It's been kind of a long time where we've been wanting to put this presentation on because we've seen the need for a long time, but COVID kind of made it a little difficult to have presentations and things like this. So this is really our first one that we're doing since COVID, so I really appreciate everybody coming out. So really, I'm kind of taking a turn on the presentation a little bit from Jack, because obviously, he talked about all the bad things and how much money it costs and things, but it's really, the whole point is that you need cyber insurance, and we just recommend that to everybody because these are huge numbers. There's not a lot of businesses that could withstand those kind of payouts. So really I just wanted to quickly, for anybody who doesn't know who we are, we've been in business 30 years. Michael actually kind of took my thing here, so he kind of explained a lot of what I have on these slides. But, we really, I think the one differentiator that I put on here is really, I think our culture is really what makes Easy Micro. It's really, when you deal with our employees, the culture that they're in, I've always just had the motto since day one: if you take care of your employees will take care of your clients. And so I've lived by that, and it's really just, I think it's really our secret to our success. So it's, as he said, we have two offerings. One is we can outsource and just be the IT department for a business where that makes sense. But if you're a larger business and you have an IT department, we also we can supplement your IT department where, with any of these things. Those are more custom plans where it could be project services and proactive reviews or tools, and whatever fits and whatever you can use, that's what we fit for that client. So really, the presentation is about really why are these cyber insurance companies requiring so much IT security. So if you don't have a cyber policy, you probably haven't been exposed to this, but if you do, you've kind of seen that every year they're asking for more and more, and the first thing you look at when you get this application to fill out is, I need to talk to my IT support, because you have no idea what most of the stuff on that application even means. So really, why this is happening is because the insurance companies are losing money. I think they had no idea what they were getting into when they started offering this, but they saw the need. They didn't charge enough, and they had no idea, Jack just talked about how much money we're talking about. These are huge claims. So that's what's happening. So they had to take a step back and say, well, what are we going to do about it? So really, the reason it's happening is their costs are increasing and their clients don't have adequate IT security. So they kind of go hand in hand, but everything that they're doing is really addressing these two things. So that's where I wanted to start this, was just to kind of let people know this is specifically what's going on and what to watch out for. So I wanted to start by kind of talking about two of the most common types of attacks. And actually, business email compromise, from the last stats I saw, is actually outpacing ransomware. And you saw how many ransomware things were out there globally. I mean, it's crazy. But I just wanted to get people to understand these are the two most common things to look out for. So business email compromise is nothing more than someone got a hold of your email account and they're doing bad things with it. So it's really that's it. But how do they steal money? Actually, Jack had a very good example. There's lots of things they can do with it, but they typically they compromise an account. Most accounts, and the most common type of attack is they get in and they put forwarding rules on your email account. So every message that you receive gets forwarded out to them, but you don't know that's happening. It's just something that typically people don't know. So it was a perfect example that Jack gave. That's exactly what I think probably happened in one of the attacks that he talked about. Is they monitor, and that forwarding rule isn't all messages, it's all messages with invoice or wire or just different keywords, and so they're getting alerted when they need to step in. So you could be having this done for 6 months and you have no idea until they step in. That's how they're not going to monitor and check every message that everybody gets. So that's kind of how it's done. So, and that's how they steal the money. They intercept and they give false wiring instructions. They have people pay invoices to the wrong place, or any kind of number of things. It just depends on what they're intercepting. So for each of these, I wanted to give people some real basics of just some things you could do to protect yourself. The first is turn on multi-factor authentication. So as Jack said, I want to just describe, in case you don't know what that means. I think people are familiar with it. Sometimes they don't know the term, but it just means more than one factor. That's what multi means. So it's just simply one factor is your password, and it needs something else. So when you log in, it's username, password, and something else. Most of the time, that's a text to your phone. People are used to that with their bank logons and things like that. That's another factor. It could be an app on your phone and you're tapping approve. It could be a key you stick in your computer, but it's just something else than a username and password. So that's all that means. But if turning that on your email, it's pretty much required across the board with insurance by any insurance company. But it's the number one thing that we're trying to get everybody to. We won't even set up an email server anymore without requiring that. So the second thing is use a VPN when you're connecting to some other network than your own. We actually I have a story of someone who, they were in the airport. They were just connecting to what they thought was the airport Wi-Fi, and they had multi-factor authentication on, but their data was intercepted, and there's different things in that data that the hackers can use to bypass multi-factor authentication. So it's not foolproof, but it's very, very important to try to do. This is not a common type of attack, but if he would have had a VPN software, which I'll just kind of describe as, it's just software that you load on your computer and it makes a connection to someplace else for your internet access. So everything is encrypted end to end. So in a case like that, even if they would have, obviously he connected to an attacker's computer and got internet access that way, it would have been encrypted, so it would have been fine. So we have recommendations. There's lots and lots of different software out there, Norton and NordVPN. There's so many of them. They're very inexpensive. But having something like that on your phone and your laptop, that would have prevented that from happening. And then the other is you might need IT support for this, because it's not like you just go into the settings of your personal mail account and turn on alerting for forwarding, but it is possible. So if you have your IT support, whether they're getting alerts or you're getting alerts, know if a forwarding rule is created. In our case, we would just say, okay, did you know this? Did you do this? If you did it on purpose, it's fine, but you should just know. So because those are the most common types of attacks. The next, pretty much everybody's heard of ransomware. So ransomware is just simply where someone encrypted your data, they took a hold of your data, and they're asking for money to get it back. So that's why it's called ransomware. But what happens in a situation like that is, just think about, you go into work one day and everything's down. I mean, you had some examples like Jack gave, like they couldn't see patients, they couldn't nobody can do anything. So usually your first call is to IT support, what's going on. They determine everything's been compromised. It's just a horrible situation to be in, but it happens all the time. And so generally your first call should be to the insurance company, because they want to know as soon as something happens, because there's certain processes you have to follow. But it can take weeks to recover. I mean, we actually have a client that we help with certain things. We didn't actually get involved in their security side, but we were certainly involved in the recovery side of things, because we mainly did project work for them. But it was probably 5 days nobody did anything. And this is a global company with locations all over the globe. They were shut down pretty much, and they're still in the process of recovering, but they lost all their data. Every server was encrypted, all their backups were encrypted, everything was gone. And in this case, it was a $6 million ransom. I mean, they didn't pay that. That was $6 million is an insane amount of money, but this was not that long ago. So it happens. So it costs, in their case, it's probably going to cost them at least $500,000 just in recovery fees, even though because they didn't pay the ransom. So how can you protect yourself from this? And these are just some basics, but most of the time, I would say 90% of the time, it's from a phishing message. You clicked on something in your email that you shouldn't have. So in this case, there is services that can filter your email, and it's called link filtering, and they will test those links to see if they're going to some place dangerous. And it's not foolproof, but it can stop a lot of things. So it's, that's one suggestion. The other is cybersecurity awareness training. Just, you can get it free on the internet in some cases. We offer that as part of our services, where we actually have the training and the testing, where we're sending fake phishing messages out to see if people are actually paying attention to what they're doing. And obviously it's not dangerous, but we can then track like who's, if someone's doing that frequently, you might want to have a conversation with them. So the next is just having a next-gen antivirus software. A lot of people don't even know this software exists, but it's a type of software that's looking for that bad behavior. It's looking for, hey, a bunch of files are getting encrypted right now, I better stop that. So and then what it has the ability to do is actually revert all those files that it did encrypt before it shut it down, and that can stop so much of this. But it's a little more expensive, and it's just a lot of people don't even know that it exists. So those are the two most biggest costs and because I'm kind of talking about their costs are increasing, it's those two types of attacks are the majority of their costs. So what happens after an attack? Well, the first thing is there's going to be forensics costs. The insurance company is going to bring in a company that's all they do is forensics of the data. They're not an IT support company. They're a forensics company. Then there's the recovery rebuild costs. That's where IT support comes in, and they're restoring backups and they're recovering everything. And then there's also a thing on policies called loss of business. So all the days that you were out of business, they're going to reimburse you for things like that. So that all adds up. So you can see how these things are adding up and why you need cyber insurance. So I wanted to kind of touch on what's common in most businesses and why they're having these problems is users are just not aware of what's going on. There's no cybersecurity awareness training. They're just, they click on messages, they don't really think much about it because they've never been taught what to do. So that's the first thing. The next is passwords are weak and they never change them, and they use the same password across all of their different accounts. It's so common, and these are things that insurance companies are saying have to change. They don't want to enable MFA. It was actually in Jack's example, not everybody wanted to do it. The senior people, they said, that's not for me, but you can have it for all of the rest of my employees. But then that's the one, all it takes is one hole in there. So the remote users, after COVID now, probably every business has some people working remotely, at least from time to time. They don't secure those. You want to have those, there's a very specific way to secure those types of connections. And then people think that the antivirus they bought and sold 10 years ago is still good enough. It's really not. They don't even really try to get in most of the time with that type of software. So those are just common things that they're finding that have to change. So what are they doing about this problem? Well, they're getting stricter. So underwriters are tightening all their standards. They're requiring things in these applications that most people don't even know what to do about. That's why the first call is to their IT support. They're asking me to do something I don't even know what it means. And they're making you do these IT assessments, and every year they're getting more and more stringent. I've done analysis of probably about 13 or 14 different companies' applications, and they vary widely. Some require a crazy amount of things, and some don't require a lot, but they're all coming together every year and making it stronger. So the one, if yours was one of the less restrictive ones, the next year it might be, just as bad as the others. So they're denying renewals, and this is something that in the research I've done, you don't want a denial, because one of the first questions they're going to ask you when you fill out these assessments and these applications is, were you ever denied coverage? Well, now if you say yes, you're immediately now a little bit higher risk, which means you're going to pay a little more. And it doesn't put you super high risk, but it's not a good thing. You want to try to avoid that. So you want to try to, and a lot of times they just don't, it's not just price increases. When this first started like 2 years ago, you would fill out all these applications and you had too many no's, you just paid more. Now it's like, no, that's not covering it. Like you're just going to get denials. So you just want to try to avoid denials. And then their prices of what they charge for the premiums have gone up 92% in just 2 years. There's not a whole lot of services out there where you see that level. I mean, we're in inflation here, but that's insane. So those are the things that are happening out there. So I just wanted to give people some things of what should you do about this. Obviously, this is all scary. Nobody wants to deal with it, but you have to. It's the world we're living in. So I came up with 3 things, and this is really around getting cyber insurance. That's really what it's not. Some of this is IT security, and we have all kinds of recommendations there. But this is really, what should you do to try to get cyber insurance coverage? So first is make sure you get the coverage. If anybody tells you that you're 100% secure and that what I installed on your system is unhackable, don't believe them. It's not a thing. You need cyber insurance because no matter what you pay for, no matter what you do, if a company like Microsoft and Google can get hacked, and they have with their budgets, there's nothing a small business could do. You do the absolute best you can, but just don't ever believe there's 100%. And we actually had that. I was at a networking event, and one of our clients happened to be there, and she was actually talking to, I think it might have been Ryan from Myers. She's like, oh, we don't need cyber insurance because we have Easy Micro. I was like, that's not a good thing. We got to talk here. So it's just just don't fool yourself, So. The skill is getting, the other thing too is the skill of the hacker community. I mean, think about how much money that this hacker community is getting, billions of dollars. This is a huge industry. They can afford to pay people a lot of money to be good. And so that's where this is coming out. So prepare to get your coverage. It's important that you answer these assessments, so get IT support help. It's important to answer them correctly because you don't want to get to the side of, oh, I got to put a claim in because I was just hacked, and you answered something incorrectly, and they're like, well, you told us you were doing this, and you're not, so you're not getting covered. So it's really important to be accurate. And and as I said before, you just don't want to get denied because then you're going to go to another insurance company, and then they're going to potentially deny you. So these are the 5 most common questions on these applications. There's a lot of them, so I could only, I would have bored the heck out of you if I would have gone through a whole application, but these are the most common things. So if you're doing these things, at least you're in better shape. Just have multi-factor authentication turned on everything that is possible. It's just, again, don't think that it's foolproof and that it can't be hacked, but it cuts so far down on your risk. Have backups and make sure they're tested, as well as make sure that when you log into them, there's certain kinds of backup systems that you can't access those files. They're backed up through special software on the servers, and you can't, like a hacker could not access those backups. They're completely on a separate network in a sense, and they're replicated off-site. So in the event of a hack, you don't want them to get to your backup. So so a lot of people just back up to like an external hard drive plugged into their computer or things like that. They go after that, and they're in minutes. Like it's so easy. So you don't want those kinds of backups. Have the endpoint antivirus on all your computers. A lot of times these applications are looking for the next gen antivirus, that they specifically ask for that. There's another term out there called EDR. It just stands for Enterprise Detection and Response. All it means is your computers talk to each other. So if one gets infected, it alerts the others that, hey, look out for this. That very simple explanation, but they're actually using that term in these applications. And then having a written breach response plan, they're starting to ask for that because they're starting to see that if you've actually have a plan of some sort and something happens, your recovery time is actually much less, and they got to pay you a lot less for business loss time and things. And then having a firewall with active protection. That's not your router that you'd buy and use in your house or things. That's the easiest way to know whether you have active protection is it a business grade firewall, and do you pay a monthly or yearly fee for it? If you do, that's the active part. It's scanning traffic for bad things. So they are pretty much asking for that across the board. So the other thing is, don't believe these common myths. We hear it a lot. I just, even personally talking to people, I don't have anything that people would want. You know, I don't, if someone takes on my data, I'm good. You know, like, it's, as you can tell, like, there's so much more than just recovering. There's the legal side of things. There's the depending on what industry, and you go over to like GDPR in Europe and things like that, that applies to every business. Now, every single business, if they get attacked, they have to notify somebody of something. So it's just, you just don't fool yourself there. I don't have anything a hacker would want. You know, that it's just, yes, if your data means something to you, then they have something that you want if you want access to your data. So they don't care what your data is. They want to just get the money because you want your data back. And then I'll take my chances because security is just too inconvenient. It's just not something that you can deal with these days. So many attacks are really preventable. So I just kind of wanted to put something together so people could at least say, okay, here's some things that you could go back and do. They're not necessarily things you might be able to do personally, but you could hire somebody to do it. Is just invest in your IT security. It's so much cheaper than a compromise. But when you look at it like, okay, I'm paying this much for IT support, and this IT security stuff's going to cost me another $2,000 a month or whatever it is, you're like, that's a huge amount of money. But think about what a compromise would be. It's so much cheaper than a compromise. And it just, unfortunately, every single year, the costs go up for that because you're battling new and more complicated things. Have a third party analyze your network for security vulnerabilities. That's a huge thing. Is you should be doing that on a regular basis because you don't know what's out there unless you're checking. You know, and making sure that your users are trained. Have some level of cybersecurity awareness training so people at least have some idea of what they shouldn't click on or what to look for, or things like that. And make sure your IT team is providing services designed to prevent cybersecurity attacks. Ask the questions, understand what you're getting. You just don't take it, it's just the whole thing of like, I got antivirus or I got a firewall. It's so much more than that. In fact, we're actually in the process of kind of realizing that we have to have an enhanced security offering that we change every year. So it's because the cost to battle these things changes every year. And so it's getting crazy out there. So we have a couple handouts that I think were handed out at the registration table. If you didn't get them, make sure you do. So we created a thing. It was 10 things that you can do to help your cyber insurability. So that was more questions and things that I could talk about in this presentation, but it was something that, it'll give you an idea of what to look for. And then Myers Insurance on the other side of that sheet had 8 things to watch out for in your cyber policies, like exclusions or things that are bad that you kind of want to try to avoid. And then, so for this event, we're actually offering third-party vulnerability scanning. We actually use a third party ourselves, so we're not the third party. And in fact, a lot of these applications are specifically stating that. So we actually contract with a third party that does these things, and then we'll get the reports and go over them with you. But we're the remediation company. We're not the people that let you know where the problems are. It's really important that you separate those. And then we also we're also offering a cyber insurance readiness assessment. That's actually one of the more labor-intensive pieces of this, but it's basically an assessment that we have that will give you a score of, and will help you answer those questions. That it's pretty much a compilation of every company's policies of all these different questions, and it'll give you a score of like how insurable do you think you are right now. And so that's so we're offering that. We normally would charge $2,000 for that, and we're offering it for free to everybody that's here. So, and that's it.